But we also need to sell products not just to the Indian market, but to the global economy. So, for example, where's our ChatGPT 5? Where is our TikTok? Where is our camera? Which a lot of it requires design. One of the people I went to school with in IIT is now in the US building new cameras, just because he's a rocket scientist in terms of his intellectual capability. Can we bring those people back to India?
Just a little bit about Blinkit. So we actually used to be called Grofers. So we're going to turn 10 years in a couple of weeks from now. We're the largest quick commerce platform in India. So deliveries in 10 minutes. We do about 700,000 transactions every day, and we're probably like the fastest. And we got acquired by Zomato 2 years ago. So now we're part of the publicly traded company as well. Books, I think overall as a vertical, most of what we sell is paperbacks for travel, children's books, gifting, and interestingly enough, smut. So all of this is essentially people ordering books, getting them in 10 minutes. These are the essential use cases that have come out so far. So
I'm trying to figure out why you need smart in 10 minutes.
Why not?
Okay.
But read the book. I really found it interesting, and thank you so much for putting so many things in perspective. To be very honest, it felt a little bit depressing also. Like there was while you're reading through it, there is a sense of hopelessness that, are we actually going to make it, or this seems to be too many challenges.
Well, I think we're trying to make this a hopeful thing. Not so much hopelessness, but saying, look, let's not ignore what we actually need to do as homework. And once we put our minds to it, we can fix it. But first, let's accept the fact that these are the problems we need to fix if we want to get there. So two things: what is there? Where do we want to go? And two, what do we need to fix in that process? And we're saying there are so many possibilities for India that we should be exploring. And India has so much diversities. We have Nobel Prize winners on one hand and kids who are failing fifth grade on the other. And there's so much in between. And so we have the ability to call on our resources, Indian resources, to make sure that we elevate everybody. And almost surely we have to elevate everybody if we're going to have a chance of succeeding. So what we're doing is pointing out, here are the things we need to do. But don't despair. There are people who've already put their shoulder to the wheel and solved these problems. And now what we need to do is look at all of the potential solutions and see how we can roll them out. But if we all do it in our different ways, we'll find some extraordinary new ways of doing it. That's the diversity that we hope will come. And so part of our prescription is, for example, on governance, don't centralize too much. That means one solution. And one solution in such a diverse country is almost always going to be wrong. Let's decentralize the answers. And that means decentralized governance also. Let more people participate in creating those answers. Let them be closer to the people. Then you'll get you'll get smarter answers.
Yeah, fair enough. I think because what we generally talk about is entrepreneurship, and one of the things you guys mention in the book is obviously that what we need to do is promote more of entrepreneurship. From your viewpoint, how is India doing on entrepreneurship? Because while we talk about there are great stories, some of the people that even I know, Mustafa and Lenskart Piyush, like all of these are like great stories that are coming out. Why don't we have more of them? What do we need to do to get more?
I think what just combining both your questions, actually, I think what we were after was to write a hopeful book, but which does not shy away from, first of all, acknowledging the problems. I think what is happening a little bit is this optimism is good as long as it sort of both for market sentiment and for energizing the people but not to the extent that it obfuscates where we actually stand. And I think the case studies of the entrepreneurs we did was in that similar vein, that we said there are lots of cool stories of first generation entrepreneurs who are doing really cutting edge stuff, and you guys included, and there's much to learn from this. But this is not even the tip of the iceberg about what we need to do to, first of all, give jobs to the people that we think they deserve. And that is what is going to put India into a growth path where we actually become a middle income country. We are still a relatively poor country. So I think, the most important thing that you need to do to encourage entrepreneurship is play with large numbers, which we have, right? Entrepreneurs are going to come from amongst us, amongst all, our people. And so if a large number of our people are not living up to the potential, or that to their potential capacities, it is always going to be a problem, both in terms of the talent pool from which we are selecting entrepreneurs and the workforce that these entrepreneurs will employ. Entrepreneurs do not succeed in isolation, right? So one of the examples that we have of Agni-Cool, which we really like, which is building these small rockets, is that these people are being enabled, are being provided an enabling atmosphere at the intersection of, for example, industry and academia. Right? They are based in IIT Madras campus, and they're trying to do something very ambitious. So, beyond just the going up from very sort of basic levels of talent pool and training our people better, what we really need to do is encourage much more research and development, both at the level of university and at the level of enabling collaboration between industry and academia. If you look at great ideas, whether it's Google, they came out of some kind of collaboration between researchers and market's ability to commercialize these ideas. So I think, again, both at the level of training our workforce, both to give them the opportunity to become entrepreneurs, and in terms of having the workforce that they can employ, and really systematically with a lot of energy funding universities that from where we think really big ideas would come, and helping them commercialize them.
That's interesting. I think over the last few years, the journey we've seen is that a lot of the innovation that at least we are seeing in the Indian market, it's coming out of more of the smaller companies, smaller groups of people getting together, getting something done. But a lot of that is still very, very targeted at the Indian market. And I think what you guys are talking about is a lot of it is that we need to build services which are direct delivery services, which are also targeted at the international market. We need to get into like a lot of these, if I understood it correctly, that we need to get into more of the early part of the manufacturing curve, where we are participating more in the R&D and the high value part of the supply chain, not like basically get into manufacturing. But do you guys see that there are enough companies coming out of India which are actually going there? Because we still seem to be exporting mostly IT in services.
Yeah, we not yet. I mean, direct services is a no-brainer. So we're now seeing a lot of firms start not back offices, but these global capability centers, which do a lot of stuff which Goldman Sachs, for example, trading models, risk management models, many of them created here. Actual trading being done also from here. So the biggest office outside the United States is in India. So those are examples of people, using skilled Indian workers. But what we really think where the high ground is products, innovative products. Where's the Indian TikTok? Right? Why don't we create that? I think what we're doing, a phenomenal job is in providing services for the Indian people, which is where the mind-boggling numbers like 700,000 transactions a day start coming in. That requires a tremendous level of logistics, of support. I mean, all that we're creating. But we also need to sell products not just to the Indian market, but to the global economy. So, for example, where's our ChatGPT 5? Where is our TikTok? Where is, even some of the hard, stuff? Where is our camera? Which a lot of it requires design. My one of the people I went to school with in IIT is now in the US building new cameras, just because he's a rocket scientist in terms of his intellectual capability. Can we bring those people back to India? And just like TSMC brought back, started with somebody who went back to Taiwan. can we bring back a whole lot of entrepreneurship, but also encourage Indian entrepreneurship? So, we've talked to pharmaceutical manufacturers. They say, look, for us to move away from generics, we need hardcore research being done in India. And that means research in the universities, research in the government labs, which are then shared with the private sector. This is what the US does very well. A lot of the investment in pharmaceuticals comes from, university research or government research. Let's spend more on research. We spend 0.6% of GDP, which simply doesn't cut it in the global market. But of course, we can't spend on everything. We need to start prioritizing. But I think there is a huge possibility. What, as you said, there are plenty of entrepreneurs around. Now we need to create more of a base for them to build on, because the hunger is there, the desire to be like Bill Gates, Bill Gates, or is there. And we have the kind of economy which can encourage that. We need to build on it.
And how do you think this evolves? Like, let's say we start investing, and we should invest more in, let's say, R&D at a university level, or setting up more centers of excellence like an ISC, which are focused purely on research, right? What are the kind of areas that we focus on, and how does it evolve? Like, how do we see that going into? Do we start becoming more of a service provider purely for the global markets in certain cases, in high intellectual cases, like you're talking about technology, or we're talking about, from products that we are contributing to manufacturing? How does this evolve?
Some of it will be spontaneous, right? Some of it will be you put out research grants, they go out to universities, somebody comes up with some great idea, and that becomes the basis for something more. But I think, as a relatively poor country, we also have to pick a few battles where we want to get closer to the frontier. I don't think it's for a government bureaucrat to pick which areas, but I think it does require sort of academia, professionals, entrepreneurs to get together and start talking about, maybe this is an area we have some advantage in because we have, let's fund more in this area. So you build on seeds that are already there and hope they flourish into trees. You can't fight every battle. You don't have the resources for that. And the worst thing to do is spread it so thin that you don't get enough momentum. But I also think that you should also rely on the fact that we have close relationships with some of the most innovative countries in the world, and we have a diaspora we can call on. So why not form more joint programs? Why not send our professors and our students to get educated? I mean, to the extent that China is backing away, let's fill the gap. Let's sort of occupy that position, bring them back. Don't leave them. Make it easier for people to expatriate back to India and generate that kind of locus. Again, with the Indian sort of academia and Indian scientists, that can make it a much bigger win for everyone.
To give two concrete examples of this, right? Like we have one of the most, probably the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world in Pune, right? During COVID, they produce a lot of vaccines, not just for India but for the world. But the vaccines, the intellectual property of those vaccines was owned by Oxford University, AstraZeneca. Right, and given that we already have such high capabilities in producing good quality vaccines at low prices, it seems like an obvious place where we should try to innovate in the primary stage of vaccine production, which is the intellectual property of owning the vaccine. Right. Second, by a lot of estimates, 1/5 of all chip design happens in India. Right, we're thinking of fabrication, which is much more capital intensive and so on, but the high value added part is in design. Nvidia is one of the most valuable companies in the world right now, but even though 1/5 of chip design is happening in India by Indian engineers, we don't own any of it in terms of intellectual property. So the value doesn't stay in India. So there are two examples in which we have a head start. We have some concrete comparative advantage, and what it requires is high levels of R&D.
Why does it not happen though? Like, for example, to your example about chip design, if we have Indian engineers that are working on chip design, why don't more of them step out and say, okay, now I've acquired the skill and I see an opportunity here and I should actually probably be in this business myself?
Why don't they step out? I think we hopefully will see more of them step out over time. But in some of these places, um, maybe what it requires is a critical mass of build an environment around which. So, supposing you got back some of our high quality professors who populate universities abroad, Stanford, MIT, this that. Say, look, we're starting an initiative in artificial intelligence, quantum computing. I mean, pick those buzzwords. I don't think I think we need to figure out which places, but get people to come back and bring some of our professionals also in India outside to sort of work with the academic this thing and see what happens. Sometimes great ideas come from that. Um, I, I think it's useful to seed some of that, but my sense is also that over time, if you create the broader mass of people who want to experiment, who want to try new things, they themselves will figure it out also. So I would say elevate the average quality of engineers. We produce 1.5, 1.6 million engineers a year, but what fraction of that is well trained, right? That's where, those are the guys populating ISRO, all the, good places that we have in India doing R&D and so on. If we expand that tenfold by improving the quality across universities, quite possibly you might see a whole set of new entrepreneurs emerging with hunger, but with the capability of taking advantage of that hunger. I would say create the environment and stuff will happen. Some direction is useful, and some drawing of resources so that people can depend on that would be a good thing. But you don't need to manage everything. Sometimes, strange things happen just because you create the environment for it to happen. Where did, your firm come from?
Yeah, I think we were beneficiaries of at least my generation of few of us that started off in the early part of last decade. Most of us were people who graduated at the right time, and we were there for the consumer mobile boom that was happening in front of us, right? Like there was consumption was going up, and mobile penetration was opening up new avenues. And a lot of the early business models like ours, they started off as more me too of like this exists elsewhere, like we should have some version of it over there, right? And but that was a market force, right? That and I came back from the States as well too, because it seemed like this was the place to be, right?
Right.
And
But people identify problems, right? What PH told us, which I found very interesting, was like he was he went to I think Canada to study,
Yeah.
and he came back. He worked in Microsoft for some time, and he came back, and he read somewhere that a large number of Indians don't even know they have bad eyesight. Right, and and as in India, anything you multiply is with many zeros, right? So there are so many opportunities like that, and if you let entrepreneurs free, to think creatively about I mean, I don't even think that he's reached 10% of the problem, like in terms of how big the problem is, and the problem creates a market, right? And that's where the entrepreneurs can really elevate quality of life and also value. So I think there's lots of problems like that all you guys can do much more cool stuff in.
Right. I mean, basically, you have to keep asking what problems can be solved, right? That's the entrepreneurial spirit, and not give up immediately. Oh, this hasn't been solved. There's a reason. There must be some reason. You talked about Mustafa. That's a fantastic story. On idli batter is what he started with. It's like this is ordinary stuff, but to do it cleanly, to do it in a well packaged way, well, that requires some thinking, and he started delivering on that, and they expanded. But I think if you have enough people asking questions and not being tied down to the old traditions, I think the entrepreneurship will happen.
Do you also make the you kind of make the case in the book as well that on one side we do want to get into this high R&D and like focus and spend more resources on research itself, but traditionally what India has been good at has been sort of engineering what already exists and like sort of modifying it or doing more frugal engineering on top of it, right? Where do you think our chances are better of succeeding? I would still bet that we're still on the.
I don't think we need to choose.
Right.
I think we need, however, to enable the higher order products to emerge. Because stuck in the frugal engineering, it'll be, moderate value added is certainly much more than the low skill stuff, but it's moderate value added. To occupy the higher end, we need to start doing the serious research and development. And look, this is not impossible. This is something China did over the last 20 years. China started with, moderate quality universities, probably not even as good as our IITs. But now they have universities which, go head to head with the best in the world. And that's a couple of decades. That's one thing I think we would benefit from studying the China model and understanding how they did it, because India has some of the same strengths. A huge diaspora outside, which is very, very capable and which can help sort of populate the universities, but also, along with the existing sort of Indian faculty, come together in creating really high quality research and development. We can do that. We just have to put our minds to it.
So I think we have to do one small exercise with you guys if you want. I want to show you the Blinkit app, and then maybe you can think of something, and we will try to see whether we have it and whether we can deliver it in 10 minutes. How about that?
Why don't we get a copy of our book?
Yeah, why not try it?
Okay. It's showing me various other things.
No, this is like getting coals to Newcastle.
yeah.
There are 1,000 of these books here, so ordering it is. Just pick one from the stack and give you no.
No, you just tend to try the. I know it's not.
We get people to try the Blinkit app and
Yeah.
sort of see whether you find something that you can think of, because I think the delights for the customer is finding what they don't expect to get delivered in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Right. So, but thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope you guys have
Thank
a
you.
good
Yeah, it was
trip.
fun,
And
yeah.